Welcome to the Prosperity Exchange, where ideas are exchanged, experiences are shared, and dental professionals come together to learn from the people shaping our industry. Through real stories, expert insight, and practical conversations, we're helping practices become stronger, smarter, and more secure. Here are your hosts, Courtney Steiger and Amber Weber-Gonzalez.
Hi, I'm Amber Weber-Gonzalez with Prosperity, and I'm here with my co-host, Courtney Steiger. We're excited to have another exciting Prosperity Exchange podcast today with our special guest, founder of Prosperity, David Harris. We have an exciting topic today that we think is so important because we really see the inner workings of this in dentistry. So we're really going to be focusing on AI and how that applies to dentistry and some basics that practice owners and even team members need to know so that you're not in a gray area or even what I call the red zone of AI.
Welcome, David. I'm really excited to talk about this topic. In fact, I think when I sent it to you was AI and PHI, because we have a lot of conversations at Prosperity about AI and PHI. And for those not familiar with PHI, that's protected health information that we're talking about. And this month especially, Prosperity is focusing on AI and the dental industry. David, your thoughts, first of all, regarding AI in the use of dental practices.
AI is going to transform every corner of our lives. And I think people are beginning to appreciate this. 2 years or 3 years or 5 years ago, AI was kind of gimmicky. Now it's becoming mainstream. And I'll give you a great example, Courtney. The other day, I drive a Tesla. The other day, my Tesla was in the shop and they gave me a loaner. And it had what Tesla calls full self-drive. And what full self-drive means is you put in your destination, you say self-drive, and then you just kind of put your hands behind your head and let the car do the work. So when I set it to take me to my office from my house, the car backed out of my driveway. It kind of looked left and right and made sure nobody was coming. And then it took off down the street and it landed in my office's parking space with literally zero human intervention.
No hands on the steering wheel, like you were hands off.
I did not touch the steering wheel or the accelerator, which I want to call the gas, but it's not really gas in the Tesla, and the brake. I never touched a single control, and it took me from space to space. It stopped at stop signs. It stopped at red lights. It waited for the light to turn green. It signaled before it turned, which not a lot of drivers in my locale feel the need to do. So it was amazing and frightening at the same time.
Yeah. I kind of share those sentiments when it comes to, AI. It's amazing what it can do. And my husband, he doesn't have a Tesla, but he has a car that is pretty self-driving. And every time that, we're coming behind somebody and it's like starting to slow down, I'm like, okay, who's stopping? Is it you or the car? It's like my anxiety is kind of up a little bit, wanting to trust that it's going to do the right thing. But is it actually going to do the right thing is kind of like what I'm thinking.
Say about this Tesla, which sadly I had to give back when my when my car was repaired, was it drove as well as any human.
Okay.
And if it can do that, think about what it could do in a dental practice. And we see AI applications now, that have been around for a few years. I mean, there are the diagnostic applications that will review radiographs and point out caries and things like that for the doctor to diagnose. I think we all could see some appeal for that, but it's not going to stop there. If AI can drive my car successfully from my house to my office and parking in both places, don't you think that it could remove plaque from teeth?
I mean, so in hospital settings, they do have robotic, what are they, like surgery assistants, right?
Yeah.
I cannot think the name of it. Amber, you probably know what it is. You're probably going to 2 a.m. call me and tell me what it is. So in hospitals, they're using this kind of technology already, right? Like when they're operating on people, correct?
They are. They're using it in dentistry also. There's an implant robot that.
That guides the implants through. But things like hygiene, maybe routine fillings. I'm not saying today, but I think within a matter of a few years, those things will be able to be guided by AI as well. And like I say, if it can move a 4,000-pound car for 3 miles flawlessly, surely it can find stuff that should be on teeth and deal with it.
I would agree.
Yeah, that's scary. Were you not petrified when your car was driving itself?
It took a few minutes to get used to, Amber, but once you saw it in action, you said, "Okay, this." When I said it handled my car as well as any human driver, I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah.
And once you realize that, I mean, you just put your hands behind your head, which freaks out all the other drivers around you, who see you here like this.
You should have had your book instead, David, like reading your book.
Yeah.
Well, next time, Courtney, I'll try to get a picture of that for our website. But my point was that for certain predictable tasks, AI is amazing. And you both know this, but for the benefit of the audience, we are now increasingly using AI to assist an investigator in investigations. And actually, our AI coordinator is working in the office today. He's right over there, and he is helping one of our investigators harness AI to solve a challenging investigation problem.
Can you give us an example, obviously without giving intellectual information, how the AI can help, investigators such as Amber and myself to move through an investigation?
Absolutely. What I'm seeing is that where AI is really good is when the data set is big and the problem is relatively simple. So you guys wrestle sometimes with these massive audit trails in practice management software. And just to give the audience the perspective, if you have a one dentist, one hygienist practice, and you decide you're going to print the audit trail for this year, you're probably going to need 6,000 or 7,000 sheets of paper when you hit print. So for a human investigator, looking for something in here is like looking for the keys you lost on the golf course.
It's a literal needle in a haystack sometimes.
It is a literal needle in a haystack, but we know exactly what we're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things, for example, that we look for fairly regularly is something called backdated transactions. And they're hard to find in an audit trail. But as you know, Courtney, when you hand that audit trail to AI and you say, find the backdated transactions, I mean, it might take it 10 minutes, it might take it 30 minutes, it might take it 2 hours, but it will find it.
Probably a lot faster than I can too, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm pretty good and I'm pretty quick, but I don't know that I could sort through 7,000 pages of an audit trail in 2 hours.
Exactly. So that's a case, and it needs to be guided by a human. And the fact that a transaction is backdated doesn't automatically mean that it's fraudulent. What it means is now somebody's got to run that transaction down and decide what it really means. So this is not a replacement for an investigator. It's a supplement. It makes them more powerful. It makes them more productive. And that's where I see AI in our world. But let's hit the big caution here. And the big caution is this: you cannot use public AI with what Courtney mentioned earlier on is called protected health information. HIPAA does not allow you to upload patient information to any public site. So this is not just AI without that organization being HIPAA compliant and giving you what's called a business associate agreement. And we're increasingly starting to hear dentists say, yeah, I took my accounts receivable report and I uploaded it to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT wrote collection letters for all the patients who owe me money. You can't do that. To be clear, there are what are called enterprise versions of some of the public AIs. They just cost a lot of money. And if you want to spend the $4,000 a month for the enterprise version of ChatGPT, then you can do exactly what I just described, assuming it's the enterprise healthcare version and they've given you a business associate agreement. But the way that most dentists or sometimes their staff with really good intentions go about this can get them into a lot of trouble. And just so the audience understands, we at Prosperident have an in-house AI program. So it runs on one of our servers. It's not open to the internet or anything like that. It's called, we thought we'd give the dental world a chuckle when we call it Apex. But yeah, Apex operates on a closed system on a HIPAA compliant server. So we can upload all those things to Apex. But the dentist or team member who's uploading that stuff to a public server is going to come to some grief sooner or later. The other one I heard the other day was somebody printed off a report of upcoming restorative treatment, and then they printed off a second report of hygiene appointments that are scheduled. And they say match them. Find the people who are coming in for hygiene appointments who have unscheduled treatment. Again, a totally rational thing to do in a dental practice, but you just can't do it with public AI.
I can completely see how that would happen. Amber and I, having both worked in the front office, you're trying to see who's coming in and who needs what. You're right. It's a very, I don't want to say it's harmless, but harmless thought, is what it is.
The attention's noble.
Yeah.
And if you have a big practice with 4 dentists and 8,000 patients, and if your practice management software doesn't natively match those things up, then again, it's totally logical, big data, small problem, to throw it all into AI and say, match it up for me. You can't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Since you're in Canada, how does this apply to like our Canadian cases versus, in the United States? Like, do you see a difference in AI and its use, or what are your thoughts on that?
The privacy legislation is a little bit different between Canada and the US, and the US standards are generally higher. Speaking for Prosperident, we just follow the higher standard. In other words, we never say to ourselves, well, the standard for this is a little bit lower in Canada, so we can do this thing that we couldn't do in the US. We just don't think that way. Whenever there are differing standards, we just pick the higher one. And in the case of privacy legislation, the US rules are somewhat more draconian. So we tend to just follow those, and that's safe. Then we don't have to start thinking about which country our client lives in or anything like that.
So I have a question for you, Dave. You talk about the cost of like BAAs and those enterprise level ones. There's still a lot of individual practice owners out there who are certainly not at the $4,000 enterprise level. Do you know of any safe options for them that they might be able to utilize AI for some of these good intention practices, such as combining your hygiene and upcoming, or looking, to reconcile your bank account quickly versus your PMS system? Are there any that might meet a better price point for our individual practices?
You still can't upload any PHI to any public AI system. That, if you're a practice owner, there are probably still some things you could do. For example, if you had summary information that did not have PHI in it. So you take your collections number from your practice management software and you upload your bank statements, which do not have PHI. And you could ask the artificial intelligence a very simple question. Did all the money that my software reported as being collected, did it land in my bank? I mean, that would be a legitimate use of public source AI. The other thing you could do is, and we do some of this internally, we will use our own AI to do what's called de-identify information. So we start with some report that has patient information on it. We have software that will replace the first patient's name with patient 1 and the 112th patient's name that appears in the report with patient 112. Once the de-identification is done, then we can upload that de-identified report to public source AI. And the challenge then is, after all that's done, you need to re-identify. So you need to go back and re-identify. And you can't use public source AI to do that. But we'll use Apex sometimes to de-identify reports and then put them in public source AI, because the public source stuff is more powerful in some ways and can solve some problems that Apex can't.
Makes sense.
So that would be a legitimate use. And I guess if, in the absence of de-identification software, if the doctor wants to sit there with a report and in Excel or something, replace each patient's name with a placeholder, then you could do that and use public source AI at that point. Sometimes I think that the cure is worse than the disease. And that if you're starting with a receivables report that has 300 names on it, replacing each of those with a different placeholder, that would be a lot of trouble.
May not be feasible.
May not be feasible. I guess if you're good with computers, you could probably write some de-identification software that would do it for you, but then you have to check the output carefully to make sure it got everything.
Dave, so once you upload information to AI, and hopefully you don't violate HIPAA and share private patient information, who is the true owner of those files? Like, I know you uploaded them, but how does that work after you've input data or files into AI? I think that's an important thing for people in the dental world to know.
That's exactly the issue. Because the way that AI works is that once you upload information to it, it becomes part of the AI's kind of data set. And one of the reasons that AI is getting better quickly is that it's, people are uploading all kinds of stuff to it, and the AI learns from that. And when you look at the models, and we're talking about to give some names that dentists will recognize, Pearl or Overjet or the other AI that can look at radiographs. Some of those programs, and I remember somebody from, I think it was Overjet, saying, yes, we uploaded 7 million radiographs when we were building our diagnostic model.
Wow.
That's correct.
So there was a lot of data involved. And Amber, I'd say the same thing about public AI. It is gathering data as people keep uploading stuff to it. And, that's to me what makes AI potentially beautiful and interesting. But if protected health information becomes part of that data set, you can't really own or control it anymore.
So important.
Obviously, with all the different uses of AI and different ways that they can do it, do you think, Dave, that AI could potentially help some of our offices detect fraud? Would it maybe set off their spidey senses a little sooner with AI? Do you think that's a possibility?
With the basic caveat, most of the information that would be useful in detecting whether stealing is happening or not is protected health information. So I'm not sure that we're going to see anytime soon a kind of do-it-yourself fraud detection using AI that doesn't break some HIPAA rules.
So what I'm hearing, Dave, is you need to have our AI specialist build this tool as a new business model so that we can put that out there.
Well, I think within a few years, Courtney, there are going to be some safe things that people can use to probably not get a court conviction, but to realize they have a problem and they need an expert. I think that kind of stuff. And to give examples, there's already software out there which does not use AI at the moment that will reconcile your bank account against your practice management software collections.
Right.
That already exists. If those two don't reconcile, it doesn't necessarily mean you have stealing. And it certainly would not be acceptable for you to make a claim against your employee dishonesty insurance or go to the police and try and get somebody convicted if you had a significant unreconciled discrepancy between what your software said was collected and what went in the bank. Okay, you have a problem. And at that point, you reach for an expert.
So what I'm hearing you say, if I'm understanding correctly, is they don't necessarily need AI for this. There's already tools that exist out there that can still do it pretty quickly for them, that can look and see and reconcile that. They don't necessarily need an AI solution for these kinds of things to already start that process. I mean, I know AI is a huge buzzword, but it is not the end all be all. And there are already solutions out there for them.
Absolutely. And I'll mention one specific solution because we had a hand in developing it. It's called SentryDoc, and SentryDoc for the most common practice management softwares will reconcile collections against deposits and tell you what kind of discrepancy, if any, you have. The SentryDoc actually can go backwards for years too. So if you want to look at 2025 or 2023. Century Doc has the ability to do that. And it's not expensive software. And I look at it as a way of automating something that most dentists find to be a time consuming nuisance.
Yeah. That's crazy what AI can do. It's a little bit scary too. It makes you just like, whoo.
Well, as you said, the thought of watching somebody drive down the highway like this is a little scary. But when you look at most of the car accidents that happen, if AI was driving cars, probably most of them wouldn't. Accidents happen because one of us gets distracted, or we're not as good at measuring the distance when we're parking the car as we think we are. Yeah, AI can prevent most of that. So scary, yes. Will it make driving safer? I'm very sure it will.
It makes me think of the Jetsons. I think we're living in that age.
So we've been really talking about how AI can help protect and detect and give all this information and useful data to dentistry, whether you're looking at unscheduled treatment, overdue recare, all that. But going back to financial safeguards, there might be some useful tools in it as for owners or managers, but how can AI help on the actual theft or fraud side easier? I mean, it's not just going to benefit those who want to protect their practice. Am I wrong to ask that question?
Well, I asked one of the AI search engines that I won't name a little while ago. I said, hypothetically, if I worked in a dental practice and I wanted to steal from the owner, what would be some ways I could do it? And it wouldn't answer that question. It had some guardrails that stopped it from telling me how to commit a crime.
Mm-hmm.
But then I asked a slightly different question. I said, okay, I own a dental practice and I'm worried that my people might steal from me. Can you please list the 5 most common ways that could happen and tell me how to protect against them? Now it gave a pretty good roadmap. And conceptually, it wouldn't be all that hard to take the information it gave me, just kind of jump over the fence to the other side of the problem. And yeah, there was a pretty good roadmap there. So, Amber, if you go back to sort of the pre-internet days, when I started doing investigation, which was 1989, actually, the day after tomorrow, ProsperiNet will celebrate its 37th anniversary of
Amazing.
putting dental thieves in jail. But when I started, the internet existed, but it wasn't very organized. There was no such thing as a Google search. The information wasn't out there. And in those days, if you stole, you had to come up with the methodology on your own, which was a real limiting factor because a lot of people don't have the creativity or the imagination or the desire to take that level of risk to steal. Today, there's lots of public domain information out there on how people steal from dental practices. And if somebody wants to be a thief and they want to learn how to do it from others, the ability is there. So that's been there for a while. AI just makes that even easier because one of the uses of AI I think of as Google on steroids, where it can gather a huge amount of publicly information and kind of collate it and sift it and so on, and give you a much more concise, cogent set of information than you could find, searching multiple sites yourself. So yes, I think AI could help thieves get better at their job, work around the doctor's controls or any kind of bottleneck that the thief encounters.
So with that being said, David, are there things that practices can do to help safeguard themselves against even AI attacks? Because I'm sure you've heard on the news, like where, a seemingly good intention AI, like went off the rails. I actually had a conversation with a DEA agent who said that she had a case where its AI was told, just make sure that this payment is made every day on the 15th. And then the credit card was expired. And so it went to the dark web and just got somebody else's credit card, and you continue to make sure the payment, so are there things that practices can do to safeguard themselves against the use of AI against them in embezzlement and fraud?
Yeah, there are. And, AI is like any innovation in the sense that the innovation comes first and the guardrails to protect people from the innovation gone wrong comes second. In other words, somebody invented the car a long time before somebody else invented the seatbelt and the airbag. And one of the things that we've done is that we have gone to all of the major commercial AI providers and we've said, there's a problem with people uploading protected health information, and we think you should have a guardrail that when your AI sees that somebody has or is about to upload PHI, that the AI says, stop. You might not be supposed to do this. We've approached them all and they're actively considering it now. They have a long list of development things they want to do, and I'm not sure exactly when those guardrails will be there, but hopefully sooner or later they will show up. But in terms of the dangers that AI poses, hopefully the guardrails will catch up sooner or later. But like I say, with any innovation, it moves forward first and then thinks of how to protect itself later.
You're not wrong.
Are hackers using AI to try to find vulnerabilities in firewall software, in things that protect dental practices? Absolutely, they are. We know they are, and it's a race between the folks who make AI and the folks who want to use it for bad purposes as to who gets there first. I think now is a really good time to be a good friend with your cybersecurity company. And in case the audience hasn't heard this, the person who handles your day-to-day IT should not be confused with a cybersecurity expert. And asking your day-to-day AI folks if you are protected against cyber attacks is probably not the best idea. I mean, you're really asking them to pass judgment on themselves,
Right.
among other things. So I want to impart to the audience the concept that they probably need a separate cyber expert who does not handle their day-to-day stuff. And dentistry is blessed with having some dental specific cybersecurity experts, but you definitely need to talk to one of those people.
What questions should a practice ask when they're working with a vendor and a vendor starts recommending that they use AI? What are some key questions that they should ask a vendor when they're saying, oh, start using AI for this and this and this?
Which AI, and is it HIPAA compliant? And in case the audience doesn't know this, the HIPAA rules are about to change. I think that the date that was originally announced was this year, 2026. I think some of it's been postponed to 2027. But people who are sharing protected health information are about to have more onus placed on them to ensure that when they're sharing it, the party receiving it is HIPAA compliant.
So I want to make sure I'm understanding this. So if you're the office and you're sharing the information to another office or to another individual, you're responsible for making sure that when it goes out, it's encrypted or compliant, or that it can't just easily be obtained by somebody else. Is that what I'm understanding? Okay.
Yeah. So when you are what's called a covered entity and you're dealing with a business associate,
Right.
it used to be that you just had to get a business associate agreement.
Okay.
And that's probably not going to be enough anymore. And if you talk to the HIPAA experts, they're saying business associates, and that's what we are when we do our work, are increasingly going to be questioned by covered entities. When was your last risk assessment done? Because HIPAA requires a risk assessment every year. Do you have a disaster recovery plan in place? If you have subcontractors who are also business associates, do they have business associate agreements with you? And are they HIPAA compliant? So there's a whole onus being shifted onto people who are going to give information to others to make sure that those others are HIPAA compliant as well. And when somebody wants you to use AI for something, now you have to start asking your questions. Well, is that going to be a compliant use of AI? And if it's not, I can't do it.
Yeah. And I think they should start asking those questions now. And I'm sure Amber would agree.
Absolutely.
As far as that goes. I mean, I know in what we do every day, I've had to take a step back from practice owners and like, hang on, stop emailing me like, patient names. Please upload it into the secure folder instead. And I think it's something we're accustomed to, but I don't think a lot of practices are accustomed to doing those kinds of things.
It happened to us for the first time this year. We just started a couple of investigations for a DSO. And that DSO came back to us and said, can you please send us the executive summary from your most recent risk assessment? And we did. Happily, our last risk assessment was completed in June. So it was very current. They took it, they read it, and they said, okay, your risk assessment identified 3 areas where you're going to do something to increase your HIPAA compliance. Can you please give us timelines for those 3? And can you please report to us when those 3 things are done?
Interesting.
This all came from a DSO, and I credit them fully, Courtney, for trying to play by the rules, even the rules that are about to happen, because they're a little bit ahead of the requirement to do this. So, we gave them our compliance plan, and yes, we reported to them as we checked off each of those milestones. Happily, it was all done within about 30 days. And now they've come back to us and said, okay, we're happy with your HIPAA compliance. Now, that's a big DSO. I think personally, it's a little bit unfair to expect a solo practice or a practice with 2 dentists to kind of do that kind of thing. But that seems like what the newer HIPAA rules are going to require.
Okay. Dave, what concerns you the most with all the new developments of AI? What's one of your main concerns?
Well, I have a few, Amber. I think my biggest one is that the wrong people are going to find AI very helpful. And to abstract from dentistry, as we have this conversation, the United States and Iran are engaged in a bit of a war. And one of the things happening apparently is what are called target lists for the US are being generated by AI. So
That's crazy.
AI is telling the United States right now, here's where you will get the most impact from that 2,000-pound bomb that you're going to. Yeah.
That's crazy.
And, the other war that's happening right now, which is between Russia and Ukraine, is the drone war, where each side's drones are trying to cause harm to the other. And those drones are largely now picking their targets through AI. So let's understand the double-edged sword nature of AI. And that if I wanted to rob a bank, for example, that AI could probably help me a lot with that idea. So yeah, it's, it can be a hugely positive force for humanity. AI is now creating viruses. And that sounds really ominous, but
it's true.
The viruses are being created to make antibiotics. Okay, because as we know, antibiotics are virus derivatives. So that's a good use. Now, somebody may get the idea, well, what if we could create a virus that was antibiotic resistant or something like that? And that would be a bad use. I think we have to say, like probably any technology, AI is neither good nor bad. It's the use to which it's put that it becomes good or bad. I mean, explosives are what let us build tall buildings and subways and all kinds of infrastructure that we take for granted. And they also find their way into military munitions that are used to harm people.
Same thing used for 2 very different purposes. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think that's the exciting and the frightening thing about AI all at once.
What in dentistry specifically, or our field, because that's what we, primarily work with in dentistry, what are you excited the most to see in regards to AI coming out?
I'm excited to see AI take each of you, and for the audience's benefit, what Courtney and Amber do as day jobs is investigate embezzlement, and in Amber's case, help dentists put safeguards in place to protect it. I'm excited to see you be able to do that in all kinds of ways that will extend your reach and make you more productive and make you each better at your jobs. And I'm not saying that because I perceive a performance deficiency. I'm saying it because I think you will be able to work with more people and do more things for them that do more good for them. So that's incredibly exciting to me.
I even see it another way when you talk about that, Dave. All of us investigators have different talents and how we see things. And so for me, like with what you're saying, how it can help us, I have an eye for seeing things one way. And, you mentioned before, like Scott Clifford, he literally has a very good mind at like picking things out. Amber could be very analytical in her thinking. I see it as like you're saying, aiding us, like being able to use all of those models during an investigation to help see all the different possibilities of the parts of the investigation.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I can take the things you're good at and make you better at them. It can take the things that you're maybe not as good at and make you better. And to Courtney's point, probably the biggest gains come in areas you're not particularly skilled. And again, for the audience's benefit, we deal with absolutely humongous amounts of data. And no matter how organized your mind is and how well it functions, there are things that get missed when you start dealing with, with megabytes or gigabytes of data. And to be able to tame that monster, yeah, that's where I think AI is going to make a difference in what we do.
I'm excited for it.
Me too.
Dave, what is something important that even if offices are using AI that you think they should still manually complete?
I don't think AI is ever going to replace the clinician to patient conversation. When you say, this is what I think you need, or alternatively, if it were my mouth, here's what I would do. I don't think AI is ever going to replace empathy. And, I think of cases like oral cancer, and you're a dentist and the pathology report has just come back and it's not good news. And you're now going to have one of those worst conversations that you have with a patient. I don't think AI is ever going to replace you being able to put your arm on the patient's shoulder and say, I'm really sorry about this, but I've got some bad news. And now let's talk about what your treatment options are and how we can make the best of your situation. AI is never going to be able to do that like a human can. AI is never going to be able to set the culture of your office.
Correct.
How you relate to staff. You make them feel comfortable if they have a problem coming back to you and saying, this didn't go right, or I wish we had done this, or it hurt me when you said that. And making people feel comfortable bringing those kinds of things to their boss. So yeah, and I'm sure there are lots of things I'm not thinking of, but those come to my mind.
As we wrap this up, is there any other words of wisdom? I know you mentioned the one, and we will be sure to link it in the show notes, for the automation that can take a look at that. Are there any others out there that you can think of that you might recommend, not necessarily AI, but even automation that practices can safely turn to in regards to helping them in this day and age and making sure their PHI is protected?
Just don't forget that AI makes mistakes. I was going to say it's human, but it isn't. But it makes mistakes, and the technology is improving, and the number of mistakes it makes is pretty small. But I use AI a lot to write pieces of software that we use for things, and sometimes it will take me 6 tries with AI, in sort of an iterative conversation before it gets it right. So don't ever assume that AI is smarter than you. It is not.
Mm-hmm.
AI is a tool and sometimes it breaks.
Yes, I've used AI. As you know, we work in open dental all the time. And I've asked it to generate queries for me, to pull certain reports. And, I'll put it in and be like, nope, that's wrong. And I'm like, well, let's go back to the drawing board. And I have to tell it what was wrong about it so that it can fix itself, because it's only as intelligent as the information it's gathering from around it, which means it's pulling from wrong sources too.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's only as good as the instructions and the direction it was given. And if that's not right, then yeah, something.
Yeah, I've had it do some interesting things to me too. When you're like, hey, please type me an email about this, this, and this, and then I'll read through it, and I'm like, wow, that was not at all what I wanted. So I think
Not what you were going for.
not what I was going for. So think it helps with efficiency, but you still have to put the human eye on everything and double check what you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us again. We know that your time is very, very valuable. And we always appreciate you coming on and talking with us. Amber, anything else? Anything that we missed?
No, I mean, I think the basics are, technology is helping us grow, but we still have to be educated and still have experts look at things for each practice to make sure we're safeguarded. So, we're always here to answer any questions that people have, because I think everybody thinks, you push a button and it's all going to be magically, the problems are taken care of. And that doesn't
I
always work
wish.
that way. I know. Yeah. Okay.
If you could develop that AI, that would be amazing. Like, can you develop the money tree AI also while you're at it?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, and please join us next time. Join us at prosperident.com. And if you have any questions about whether or not you're at risk, might be vulnerable, or think you might be stolen from, there are some free quizzes linked below to take those assessments. There's no risk to you. Take them at any time. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Prosperity Exchange. Until next time, stay informed, stay proactive, and protect what you've worked so hard to build.